Okay, I guess we'll start. Thank you and welcome everyone for being here. This is obviously the Kickstarter tips and tricks to succeed. And woo, okay, there we go. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with crowdfunding. GX3 was crowdfunded on Kickstarter, so that's really awesome. I bet a lot of you guys are backers. So thank you for making this happen. Just as quickly, like how many people have backed a crowdfunding campaign? Raise your hand. All right, cool. How many of you guys, I guess me too. How many of you guys have ran a Kickstarter campaign? Cool, about two. All right, yeah, a few. How many people are thinking about doing a Kickstarter campaign? All right,
yeah.
Whoa, all right, well, you come to the right panel. All right, cool. So, whether, you've done one or backed one or thinking about doing one, hopefully these wonderful people on this panel will help, answer any questions that you may have. So I think what we're going to do is kind of do a quick intro with everybody, and then kind of do, a discussion, then Q&A, like ask anything that you guys want. That's PG, I guess, maybe. But okay, so we're professional. So I guess we'll just start with Serena.
I guess that's my cue. Hi, my name is Serena Nelson. Aside from being a diehard fan of crowdfunding and backing since early 2012, I'm also a writer for two crowdfunding gaming sites. One is Clickist. I'm most active on this one. I've also been doing some coverage for the con over the last couple of days. I'm also a writer and administrator for the Kickstarter Adventures. This one focuses mostly on adventure and RPG games through Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And while I haven't been doing much writing lately, I have been making sure articles have been pumped out at a reasonable rate. That's pretty much me.
Cool. My name is Maxwell Salzberg. Most recently, I'm one of the co-founders of BackerKit. We help a lot of Kickstarter projects after you're successfully funded. There's a lot of kind of weird, strange, happy problems that happen. Helping people kind of administer their backers, and basically so they can focus actually on making the thing that they got money for, rather than the 17 other crazy full-time jobs you sort of inherit as a result. I also actually am one of the founders of Diaspora, which is kind of ancient history, back in 2010. It was one of the first really big Kickstarter projects, but BackerKit kind of came out of my own experience there, so kind of both two sides of the coin. Happy to answer any questions.
I'm Josh Trujillo. I'm a writer and creator of Death Saves, Fallen Heroes of the Kitchen Table, and I do comics and gaming stuff too.
Yeah. This easier, I just took this out.
Just go for it.
Yeah. Hey, my name's Zach Weinersmith, and I draw comics and write books, and we have been using Kickstarter, I think, since 2012 maybe, and it's made a big difference for our business, so definitely in favor of it. And that's a book of mine. Nailed it.
Awesome. And I'm Rosanna Yau. I'm one of the creators of BackerKit, so I'll be moderating and taking your questions. Okay, so first, why crowdfunding? Like, who should do it? Are you guys just crazy, or like, what made you want to do a crowdfunding project?
I didn't run one, but you definitely have to be crazy to be on Kickstarter.
Yeah, you've seen a lot of Kickstarters.
I've seen so many. Okay. I've seen everything, and you do need to have a little bit of craziness to run one.
Why did we do it?
Yeah, why'd you do it?
I guess
not why you're crazy.
the obvious, I guess the obvious thing is I did not have the funding to get this project printed without crowdfunding. And I thought that it's a pretty straightforward premise. It's about fantasy gaming. It's about comics. And so I thought that it might be able to tie into kind of that Kickstarter community, because there's so many people who back projects on Kickstarter almost exclusively. Like that's their main form of content. And there are people who back everything on Kickstarter, as I'm sure those of us who have, so it was just to realize something that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise.
Yeah, that's interesting. So for me, we had already released a few books, and we probably had the capital to do it in-house. But with Kickstarter, you get access to those people, and you get access to media and nice software, and you also get the opportunity to basically upsell people, and also you have these people who want to spend crazy amounts of money, the best people, and you can you can access them in a better way than you can just by straight up selling a book for $20, say.
Okay, I guess what goes into planning your Kickstarter? I mean, it's a lot of work. It seems like it's, to a lot of people that haven't run one, it seems like it could be really easy, but that's just not the case. And so, I mean, how did you prepare? Like, how long did it take you to plan this?
Well, actually, okay, so I probably have maybe an opposite answer. So, Diaspora, which is the last project I ran with my own name, obviously I help, BackerKit helps a lot of projects, so this is not the case, but so I guess this will be a contrarian probably to everybody else. Like, in 2010, there was kind of no Kickstarter really wasn't a thing then. We made the mistake of making the video by balancing it on the overhead projector in our classroom at 2 a.m. in the morning, and we all look like we're really hate making this video, and we just made it up and tried to do it in one take, and that's what it was. Mm-hmm. You can't really do that anymore, which is sort of an interesting thing to say, that Kickstarter is actually rapidly evolving as to what is successful.
The standards have gone up a lot. Mm-hmm. For me, I was just kind of watching, I was hovering over everyone else's Kickstarters. I had some friends that done some crowdfunding projects, because I live in LA, so they're all doing web series, which is a whole nother thing. But so I was just kind of learning from their successes and failures, I'd say maybe for almost a year, while I was working on the organization of the actual book. Much of my thoughts were about, well, how am I going to do a video? Who's going to film it? What am I going to say in the video? How am I going to promote it? These are all things I had to think about in advance, and I still feel like if I could go back in time and do it over again, we'd get twice as much, because I learned so much through trial and error of just doing it.
As a backer, I've noticed that, at least lately, in order to capture your audience, you need to capture them right away or you lose them. For the pitch video, it's actually been more or less recorded that if you don't get them in the first 30 seconds of the video, they're going to move on. So you have to do your research months before you hit the publish button.
I guess what else did you guys do for, I mean, you mentioned that you do a lot of research, but were there certain tips or things that you've learned from people that were really helpful that made your Kickstarter successful? Yeah,
so for mine, because it's mostly comics and fantasy gaming, and those are two worlds that have very big online communities around them, but they're separated, they're fragmented. There aren't a lot of, there's not one hub for comics fans, there's not one hub for RPG fans. So just in my being a fan of these things, whenever I found a new blog that I'd never seen before, I'd make a bookmark of it. And so I'd make a bookmark of the contact page and I'd put it in a spreadsheet. And so when it came time to promoting my work, I had a list of 200 media and blogs, podcasts, what have you. And guess what? A lot of them didn't respond. I'd say maybe 1 in 10 responded. And maybe from that, maybe half of them gave me anything worthwhile that really brought traffic to the site. Kickstarter, their back end isn't really that great. As a creator, you get some idea of which links draw the most traffic, but you don't really have a lot of information beyond that. Mm-hmm. I'd say maybe it started out the first month, which we hit our goal in 48 hours for mine, which was great because I set a very reasonable goal. But I'd say originally 75% of our backers were links from the creators, including me and people like that, linking on their blogs, their Tumblrs, whatever. And by the end of it, it had reversed because a lot of them were just backers from the Kickstarter community, or people in so many 3 a.m. backings, so many weird middle of the night $100 donations. So I don't care whatever, you're just drunk, you're drinking a glass of wine, you just want to back some Kickstarters. Thank you.
Yeah, drink more.
Yeah.
One other thing is, I mean, obviously, like you as a creator, one of the things that's cool about Kickstarter is you have a lot of these creators kind of coming from the community that they're also trying to sort of serve. And, you know, I think definitely if I had to whitewash, you know, some general advice is you want it to just be, you know, even the video and the description, you know, just be an honest depiction of yourself, because I think a lot of the most successful Kickstarters are really extension of the creators, which I think makes it way cooler than selling it in a store. Is you're a little bit selling yourself, which is a really scary thing. If you've never had any, like maybe public persona beside your Twitter or anything like that, that's actually a really, putting yourself out there is really, really scary, and saying like, I'm Max and I made this thing and it would be cool if you supported me. That's a really scary thing to do. So, you know, whatever you do, make sure it's just like in your voice and authentic as possible. Like don't, I mean, you want to maybe, you know, put your best foot forward, but, you know, don't try to say something you're not, or who you're not, because you need to, for 30 days, keep it up. That and one other small tip that's a little bit like, I guess, marketing 101. A really good thing to do is try to build an email list of people who might want to back you. And it could totally be friends and family, or maybe you do have a website. You can like put up just like a MailChimp link and then just blast that out when it starts. It's so helpful if you have a good little bump the first day. That's actually really helpful. And it can also kind of be a good bellwether when maybe you're ready to launch, is when you have enough people who sort of, even without a campaign, were at least kind of interested enough to maybe give you their email. That can be just a good thing to sort of, am I ready yet, kind of benchmark.
Oh, and Kickstarter lets you post up a preview of your campaign before you have to launch it. And I probably had that page for 2 weeks, and I sent it to all the creators involved with my project to get their opinions and feedback. And I was tweaking images, I was clarifying words to make, making things more concise and more, because you don't want to, there's so many sprawling Kickstarter pages, I think we've all seen them, where it's the Bible. And it's like, what am I buying again? You could just get lost in it. And so,
And people talk about themselves too much sometimes instead of the product, you know what I mean?
It's important. It's good to have a personal investment into what you're backing, because you're backing a person most of the time. But like, I don't need to know anything else beyond.
Yeah, their life story. It's a little weird. One thing, can I say, like, if you haven't done it before, if you have a friend who's good at math, or if you're good at math, maybe talk to them. Because you can get lost in these numbers. So it's like, you have a project and you see this big number, and it's like being drunk. You just see this huge number and you're like, I'm wealthy, and it turns out you're not, because there's like, beyond the obvious costs of making the stuff, shipping is going to be probably more expensive than you're imagining it is. And also there's an upfront fee for just using Kickstarter. And so there are all these fees, and they scale with the amount you're selling. So make a spreadsheet. Like, I've known people who made either $0 or $- and $- is a bad kind of dollars to make on a Kickstarter, especially because it might take you 6 months to get your $. Not good. So definitely actually go through your numbers, be clear about them.
And on the topic of the preview pages, like he was talking about, while your preview page is unpublished and private, the good news is you can send the link off to other people for review. I've actually been asked to preview several Kickstarter projects before they launched that were okay, but could have really used that extra little touch. And there's actually a box at the top of the preview page for comments from people with the link. So you can definitely get feedback from fans before it even launches.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. Was some of these learnings, like, did you guys get burned by some of these things? Like, did you learn the hard way, or was that just you prepared well ahead of time with
sort
friends
of
before that? Yeah, okay.
There are rewards that I will never ever consider offering, because shipping is the most important part of a Kickstarter. Yeah. If you have a Kickstarter that doesn't have shipping in some, do that one. Because for me, the one I got burned on most was posters. A lot of people get burnt on international shipping, and you can set specific amounts for, if you're pledging. We had pledges from Israel, from Australia, but those people wanted posters. And so the book I can send for $18 or whatever, international mail, that's fine. I took that into account. I didn't take into account that I'd separately have to mail a poster tube, which is a weird size. Just this week, my Kickstarter ended in March. I got someone from Australia saying they never got their posters. So I ordered the poster to be printed at their local Office Max or whatever it is, and for them to pick it up. That still cost me $30, and I spent $10 printing the posters, and originally $30 mailing them.
Yep.
So.
And the tube itself is like an extra buck.
Yeah, the tube's an extra buck.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've noticed lately that some Kickstarters are actually foregoing physical items or very limiting their physical items just because of the shipping costs going over worldwide.
Yeah.
There's at least in the U.S. there's domestic. There's standard flat rate shipping boxes, small and medium. This book is sized this way, so it can fit in a standard size small shipping box. So it cost me $6 to mail it out. However, the posters cost more.
I will say, just unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, I didn't start BackerKit to become an expert in shipping stuff all over the world, but I have inherited that. And I will say the one tip is the most expensive place to buy postage is your local post office. Mm-hmm. You can actually go through like 16 middlemen and get like way cheaper price. Doesn't make that much sense, but definitely, don't ever pay retail on shipping too. Yeah. So you got to do your homework there and.
Oh yeah.
It's one of those things that the flat rate box can be a really good, easy hack, but there's even things you can leverage.
Yeah.
So you're saying things like go through UPS?
No, like you can actually buy USPS postage through someone that's not the post office for like a quarter of the price. It's a racket. There's I can plug myself. I guess we do this, but there's lots of places. Hilariously, you can go to the USPS website, and that's a little bit cheaper than your local post office. But you can also use ShipStation is really good. They have they don't actually sell postage, but they have a bunch of connections and whatnot. Our Stamps.com is horrible software, but has very decent prices.
It adds up because it's per unit you save money. So
yeah, it's pretty crazy. I guess the USPS does this so people can resell postage and make a lot of money, especially on the international stuff. So you can find someone will resell you postage, and that's not their business model.
Yeah, and there are expenses in shipping like printer ink and labels that you may not take into account initially, and those stuff add up. A box of labels. I spent $150 on labels.
One of the other ones.
Oh, okay.
Labels.
Postage.
Shipping. Let's continue taking questions.
Talking about postage. I'm a huge vacuum freak, like 150 plus projects.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah.
Lightweight.
Whoa.
That's fine.
Calm down.
Something that I've seen that very few people take advantage on Kickstarter when you set it up. So if there's a physical reward depending on the tier you're in, I've only seen this done like 3 times where they say like, oh, you're in the US, choose this thing and it'll add $10 to my total pledge. So then like, do you really want it? Okay, yes, I will pay $47 for this, $37 pledge, whatever. And I highly recommend that because the creator, they put the numbers and figured out all the math on the back end. There's never a surprise for guys to eat cost because you shouldn't have to. So I think people take advantage of that.
One really freaky thing that happens that you're 100% right. Since a lot of times a Kickstarter is to raise money to actually like make the production version, you as the creator don't know how much your thing weighs or how big it actually is when you actually are doing the Kickstarter.
Right.
Like you maybe have a production sample, but that maybe isn't the same weight
and
paper.
You may have a stretch goal for extra pages, and that increases. That's why I like the flat rate shipping boxes, because I didn't know how many pages the final product would be. But whatever works for whatever content you're trying to deliver to people.
Which does bring one other, for all those people who want to launch a project, and it's funny, I've had a lot of conversation with. The other thing that you don't want to do that, everybody wants to be like as backer friendly as possible to make the price, as low as you possibly can. And one thing that's cool about Kickstarter is that you actually are able to get an economy of scale, maybe the lowest, even if you have a really, nice, true goal. But definitely leave margin for yourself, like 25, 30%. Mm-hmm. And, and I would say if it's your first Kickstarter project too, like pretty much try to come out even. Make that be your goal. Because one of the things I think that's really important and cool about Kickstarter that we've seen with BackerKit is, if you get an amazing group of backers and you sort of meet their expectations at sort of a bare minimum, and you want to do something else, they're going to show up on day one. And you kind of have this moss ball that kind of continues with it, because you have to do a lot of work, and definitely the first one is by far the hardest. But then you have this contingent that you can kind of rely on. So for the first one, just make sure you can get out and, that you have the budget to do right by these people who are supporting you, because they're kind of sticking their neck out for you. And so you definitely want to make sure that you can do the right thing. And if you have to, accidentally spend $5 more per thing on shipping, you're not going to be totally negative dollared and, not live to see another day. So just definitely take that into account. And I know everybody wants to make it be cheaper, and then if it's cheaper, I'll get more people. But you want to think in a little bit of the macro to sort of be like, okay, next time we'll be way better at this. It'll be cheaper just because we won't make so many mistakes or not understand certain parts or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I guess we could continue taking questions. I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to ask their questions, and we can continue going down the line. Does anyone have questions out there? Yes.
What kind of infrastructure does Kickstarter lack that you feel is really important that potential people running Kickstarters would need to make sure they line up before they get into Kickstarter?
I guess Rosanna and I founded a company because we feel strongly about this. I guess, so I don't know, if you back GX3, you use BackerKit. They used us, that's how we kind of became friends with the Mid-Boss crew. But, there's a we kind of call it the world's greatest problem for having it. You have a successful Kickstarter, congratulations. You now have hundreds of people who want something you haven't finished inventing yet. This is a really good problem to have, but a lot of weird things happen. That are all, good problems. It's not like something's fundamentally wrong with Kickstarter, but it might be a little more than you signed up with. If you thought you were going to make a comic book, you maybe didn't realize you're going to have to become a postage expert, and a box expert, a customer service expert, a book supply chain.
It's 100 jobs.
It's 100 jobs.
So BackerKit kind of, we kind of take over that Kickstarter survey process, and in that, we basically ask all the information and collect all the information in a way that will make it really easy for you to basically optimize a lot of your fulfillment, whether you're going to use a fulfillment company like Amplifier, which Zach uses, or if you're going to ship it down yourself and turn your garage into your own little fulfillment house for the day. BackerKit's kind of software that helps you kind of bootstrap, and there's 1,000 paper cuts basically, and we've sort of seen them all. So that's one piece I think they very much lack. I don't think it's 100% their fault, because they're kind of like the tidal wave that's helping you raise all the money, but they, the tidal wave doesn't help you clean up the mess.
Yeah, I mean, when the Kickstarter's over, you basically have a list of people and some money, and that's what you got. So. Yeah, the more we've gotten to where we offload pretty much everything to third parties, and not just because we don't want to do the work, but like it ends up cheaper because like we work with Amplifier, which is a company, they know everything about boxes and postage. So for example, talking about posters, we did our prints a size that was small enough that we could ship them in flat containers. Mm-hmm. So that's a savings.
That's a really good idea.
It's huge. It's huge. So it saves us like $1 per item shipped. So it's like if we are shipping 8,000 items, just that little tiny change that they know about that we don't saves us an enormous amount of money, both in shipping and the cost of the item. So it often pays to go with a third party. Maybe you don't want to because you don't want to pay someone else money to do something where you're like, I could do it. But shipping is sadly quite complicated. So it might pay to look into a third party. And there's also, in terms of doing your math, you don't just do the math about the money, you also have your time. So if you're shipping like 600 things and it takes you 10 minutes a piece, that's 100 hours of you packing boxes. That's a lot of time. And so it might not be worth it for you to do that personally.
Not to mention you get really tired, and then if you accidentally put a medium shirt instead of a large shirt, you'll get a very angry email from someone who stuck their neck out for you, demanding you to send them a new shirt, which you should do. But that's the other thing too, is a lot of times backers, this is the age of Amazon. They assume they can return everything, and return postage must be included. And that's obviously up to you. It's sort of a decision you need to make as dollars and cents, but that's a little bit when people are getting stuff online. More often than not, that's kind of the reality they sort of expect. So we're doing like a system that will minimize your mistakes might actually be a better system that might be the cheapest, but maybe makes more mistakes, which is that's really hard math to do,
Yeah.
right? Which is why also if you do decide to go with a fulfillment center, you probably never want to go with the cheapest one because it won't end up being the cheapest at the end of it because they'll lose stuff. And
yeah, but I would say definitely unless you're only shipping if you're only going to ship like 100 things, it's fine to have your friends come to your garage and do it. But if you're getting to scale, I would definitely find some third party to work with.
Did you guys, which one of you guys like shipped yourselves and used the
I
fulfillment?
shipped myself.
Okay.
And I just got into the zone. I just like one day, just me and the dog, or just, I still have small flat rate shipping boxes filled with rewards because I accidentally overpacked. That's how in the zone I was. And thankfully I scaled the rewards in such a way that I wasn't sending 100 different types of packages to people. Everyone was getting this package, and some people were getting the posters separately, which was easy for me to do. But if you're in the position where you're offering, if you're $10 you get a bookmark, $15 you get a book, once you scale it like that gets confusing, and I would definitely A, try to pare it down to something manageable, or B, look towards a backer kit style support group.
I don't know much about BackerKit. Just a question, is it a program? Is it just like, I'm going to call someone on the phone and they're going to speak with me and guide me through this?
It's a little bit of both. It's primarily software. That's what, but we're super hands-on with. We sort of did this. Isn't how I wrote and I started, but a lot of it's like almost Kickstarter therapy a little bit because we kind of get a lot of people whose hair are on fire and, oh my gosh, I promised this thing and I actually have no idea how I'm going to do it, and you'd be surprised. So it's definitely software. It definitely we've kind of been around the block. It does a lot of things, but So yeah, and with that being said, if you are doing, sorry, I'm plugging myself, but if you are going to do one, we're happy to talk to you beforehand, and it doesn't cost any money. We just like talking to project creators. We do it every day. There's some folks in the audience too. Happy to, if nothing else, point you in the right direction, right? We started this because we like crowdfundings and we don't want it to blow up in your face.
And to add on to that, on the backer side of BackerKit, it is actually very intuitive. Basically, I don't know how the creator end is, but for project backers, all they have to do is plug in their information, select their add-ons, and you can actually increase your pledge if you want to, which is something you cannot do with Kickstarter itself.
So I have a question. I think a lot of people here will probably be shipping things fairly minimally because it's digital distribution for games. But one of the upfront costs that's really challenging is that to make a successful Kickstarter, it seems like you have to have a very compelling video with high production values, and that seems to lie outside of the skill set of most game developers. And I was wondering if you had any experience about third parties to work with who could help create a really polished looking video, especially for people who don't already have an existing following to tap into.
I could talk a little about that. I would say, first of all, I've never done a video game, and that sounds like the hardest level of Kickstarter to me. We were talking about this earlier. But in terms of your video, I think you don't always need an ultra high production quality video because there's an extent to which, as he was saying, you're selling yourself, right? So in some contexts, I almost worry if you go too high production value, it's kind of weird. It's like there are people who want to feel a personal connection to you, and if you're behind high production quality, it can be a little strange. That said, so for the books I do, we purposefully do kind of a bit more of a low key. I'm going to sit and talk to you about what we're trying to do here. But we did a sort of like novelty toy product called the single-use monocle. It's a disposable monocle in a condom wrapper is what it was. It was a real monocle though. Everybody thought it was a condom. So for that we actually spent some money on the video because it was like, this is clearly not a personal connection to me thing. And so we really wanted it to look like an old-timey sort of video, and we actually shelled out a decent amount of money for that. But so it kind of depends. Like if you've got a little capital to spend, it's not the worst way to do it. I don't know if I'd recommend that for your very first project. But we, for that, I won't say how much, but we spent a few thousand to get a nice quality video, which isn't that much to make up on a project, but just do the math. But in terms of finding someone, there are tons of people in like LA who are looking for freelance work. You're probably not too far from that connection, I would guess. But
Yeah, and this brings me back to the point I said earlier about the video needing to capture your audience. You don't have to have ultra production ILM style graphics and stuff. You can just sit in front of the camera talking about your project. Right. As long as you capture the audience and get your idea out of the box right away. Sure, you can do weird, crazy, off-the-wall pitches, but as long as you capture your audience's attention, that's all that really matters with the pitch.
Yeah, we did a kids book recently, and we had this great French artist named Boulet, and one of the things we did is we just showed him drawing stuff, because it's just like there's nothing we could do to make it better. He's just that good, and so you don't always need special effects and stuff, that sort of thing.
I had a question. Yeah.
You see projects that are everything from like 100 backers to 500,000 backers. To what extent do you know ahead of time about what range you're going to be in, and what do you do to prepare for whatever range of?
For me, the content was already produced or mostly done. I will say that, if you're doing a video game, obviously you can't have the entire thing done. But for me, I just knew that we needed, if no one made any money, we would need, I think it was $3,500 was the printing goal. And so I set everything kind of within that realm. And I knew that if push came to shove, I could shell out the money to make the difference. If you're doing a video game and you need $100,000, I don't really know how you work on that kind of scale and kind of bet against that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when it comes to video games, a lot of project creators, especially lately, have been selling themselves. They've been they need $500,000 in order to fully produce what's left to what they need to finish. But they say, well, we can cut out a few features, and we'll bring our funding goal to 50,000, and we'll make up the rest in stretch goals.
And there are some people who will only fund successful projects.
Yes.
So there's something to be said for, there are people who want to help get you over that hill, but there are some people who are just watching you and waiting for you to get over that hill before they give you any money.
Yeah, my wife worked on a science funding project, and they actually did statistics analysis on this, and they found you were more likely to get a backer after funding. Yeah. So I think part of that is just once you're funded, people are just shopping. They're just buying your thing. Whereas before that, it's maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't. Yeah.
After close to, that's usually when you get more people saying, yeah, let's help set them over the goal. Yeah.
Kickstarter is a pretty well-established ecosphere. For a lot of people, Kickstarter and crowdfunding are synonymous, but there are emerging media-specific alternatives like pledge music for albums, and more significantly to this crowd, Fig for a video game. What advice do you give people to determine what platform on which they should do their crowdfunding?
Kickstarter is obviously the 10-ton elephant in the room. Everybody wants to go through Kickstarter or Indiegogo, but like you said, I'm not familiar with the music one, but I'm familiar with Fig. That's more of a special niche specific to that medium. For example, with Fig with video games. But some people might want to shy away from that because they don't know what Fig or any of these other smaller ones are.
Yeah.
I would say one thing that's been interesting is if it's your first campaign and maybe you don't have some sort of constituency, let's say, Kickstarter will actually, or Indiegogo, their networks might do a little bit of work for you in terms of giving you a little bit of exposure. I think maybe if you're more established and done many, your Kickstarter benefit is actually probably more negligible, I would say. Certainly, I think all the things that Serena was saying do apply, that some people just have a comfort level. They already have a Kickstarter or Indiegogo account. But I think when you're small, it's good to kind of go with the biggest player. But I think it's something we need to keep looking at, because I think even though crowdfunding has kind of jumped the shark a little bit, I still think we're in the MySpace days of crowdfunding, So nobody's really figured out, I think, what the real like eventually thing, we all think we're cool with our top 8 friends and customizing our stuff right now. But I think, I'm 100% confident that we'll be all looking at, Kickstarter rewards and remember those videos. And so that's.
And I think you have to know, you have to know what your potential audience is maybe and whether there's a community within that crowdfunding. I'm not aware of a lot of successful comic projects that have been funded through Indiegogo, for example. I think the Kickstarter, if you add up all the Kickstarter comics, Kickstarter's the 3rd largest publisher, just from successfully funded projects. And so I go to Kickstarter if I'm going to crowdfund a campaign. But if you're doing, I know short films and web series, and even journalism does really well in Indiegogo. So.
Maybe there's some questions.
Yeah, down the perfect.
I tend to just start a project if it has it come by and not worry about it until I get to the 48-hour notice. How much of a bump, how much of the percentage do you normally see in the last 2 days?
It's a pretty good percentage. It's an S-shaped curve, right? The big jump is in day 1, 2, and 3, and then it flattens out in the horrible middle period of crowdfunding.
I call that the trough of sorrow.
The trough of sorrows, yeah. And then right at the end, I would say it's not as, usually for me it's not as big as the first day. But it's maybe like something like 1/5, maybe 20%. But it actually varies from project to project. So like for the projects where I'm clearly dealing directly with my own audience, there's less of a pronounced effect. Whereas like with the kids book we did, we got a lot more media about it, and so there was like a much bigger push right at the end. So it varies, but it's a pretty high percentage. It's always nerve-wracking, but so thanks for that.
Yeah, in the years that I've been backing, like you said, it's like an S curve. Most of the pledges were in the first few days and the last few days. The last few days mostly due to that 48-hour email to those who started.
For me, I think we got about 40% of our donations from the last week. And some of that, we hit our goal very early, which helped us get more media coverage because there are outlets that won't cover a tentative Kickstarter campaign, especially if you don't have a body of work behind that.
Yeah.
So I would say we got about 40% in the first 2 weeks, and we probably got about 40% in the last week.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Can I add to that too? Like his point about how the media is more likely to cover you if you are successful early on. So sometimes people will come to me and be like, well, I have a plan for the whole campaign. I'm going to roll out this in week 1 and this in week 2, and that's fine and all. But I would use all of your biggest stuff in the first day. Because if you can reach your goal really quickly or hit a high amount, then it'll cascade. You'll get media coverage you wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
Yeah, with the blogs I write for, we usually try to get announcement pieces out within the first day or so in order to be able to garner up that base, the base.
Multiplier.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. Yeah, because nobody wants to cover 2 week deep Kickstarter has slight improvement. It's just not exciting news. Yeah.
So they're at 47%.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Over here.
I had a question about Kickstarter where it's like, I've heard a lot of Kickstarters do, it's like you had an idea for a project and you approach crowd to do it, but I also heard a couple of people who are working on smaller projects where they use the ransom model, where they have a finished project and it's usually like a digital album or like a role-playing game that they release as a PDF, and they're like, here, my Kickstarter is starting in 30 days. If I don't make like 40 grand by the end of it, it's not coming out. But if it is, it's coming out for everybody. Like, how do you guys think of that as like a model? Because I've been considering doing that also for the Kickstarter.
Well, I've seen projects that run when with video games, they're usually looking for the final leg of development, but as far as holding ransom like that, I haven't seen very many succeed like that.
I would say that maybe it's more of a function of, it's getting it's probably the story you want to tell. I think that everybody wants the Kickstarter project to succeed when it comes down to it, Kickstarter is a very good like marketing event for a lot of video games products and whatnot. It's something to sort of help them gauge interest and understand how big something's going to be. My personal sort of feels are that you could probably spin that same reality as a slightly nicer narrative. That seems a little like nice. I mean, you're right though. I guess it is holding it ransom, so it's probably maybe just semantics. But you could just sort of say like, hey, everything's ready to go. Need to get tooled up to really be able to print them out at the quality we want at the scale we want.
We just need this last 20% to finish up.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. Maybe this is more like a philosophical bent in crowdfunding. That's a weird thing to say. But it's like, for me, I knew the book was going to come out in some form, whether I released it in Comixology or whether I photocopied it and just threw it at people on the street. Because the work was done. I mean, I wanted to make this thing, and the 40 contributors worked on it, and I was really proud of it. So at least for me, the stretch goals were inclusive. Everyone gets a mini print, everyone gets an extra story, everyone gets a hardcover edition instead of a softcover edition. But I guess I don't know. I don't like that. You're not going to get it unless we get that amount. But maybe you got to do that if you're raising 40 grand versus 4 grand.
And I've seen projects, especially later on, saying, when it looks like that you are not going to make it within the last few days or whatever. Sometimes they'll say, it'll take a lot longer without the funding, but come hell or high water, we'll get it done. It just might take a lot longer to finish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At work, every day I'm dealing with website outages and billing outages. How stable of a platform is Kickstarter? Do you find there are times like, hey, I donated. Well, apparently the payment processor ate your money because I don't see you on the list. Or is it pretty stable?
I have seen some glitches, especially in comment sections. A couple years ago, Kickstarter was really heavily hit with one big project or another, I forget what, but it caused what we in the comment sections of a couple projects I backed at the time, we called it the Kickstarter time warp, because it would push the comics back hours. It's like you don't get an update for like a day. But unless there's like a really big, unless there's like really a lot of traffic going through Kickstarter, I found it to be a relatively stable platform.
Yeah, I would say like it's either like down or it's working pretty well. So like I don't think that I don't think necessarily pledges slip through. With that, so you can go look at their Kickstarter uptime page to sort of see all of their transgressions. Worth noting, if Kickstarter has an outage right as you're in the final hours of your campaign, they won't give you those hours back, which is pretty rough.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, so I mean it's happened, I think, only a couple times, and since the time, it is pretty rare, but it could happen.
Yeah. And what's more common than that, I think, I'd say maybe about, 3 to 5% of people who backed it, their payment didn't go through. And that's something that maybe you need to account for in addition to not only give yourself some leeway, honestly, 20% for shipping or printing or anything. Everything costs a little bit more than I thought it would for the most part. But I mean, if that could be 10% of backers, you just don't know. Yeah. Especially now because everyone's switching to new cards with chips. Yeah. A lot of their card numbers are changing, so I bet a lot of people doing crowdfunding now, they'll find those credit card payments don't go through.
Yeah, it's happened to me recently. I've had my credit card information changed. I wait for the confirmation email telling me, oh, your pledge has gone through, and then I get, oh, your pledge has been denied because the card's information's wrong. Yeah. And I changed my information, it goes through right away.
Yeah. I think we have time for a few more questions, so I think we have like 5 minutes or so. Good.
I was kind of curious about timing. Do you find that a certain time of the year is best for different types of projects? Is it kind of generally, I've heard April, that's, around tax season, people have more money that's disposable. Does it change by product, or just what your thoughts on that?
In my opinion, stay away from December. There's, especially in the gaming, if you're running in around November, December, January, I found that you have a less likely success rate than you would say in the summer or something like that.
So spring or summer is usually the better option.
See, that's interesting because I was going to say something different. But it might vary on the product. So for me, as a person who does daily comics, summer traffic-wise is the worst. I think probably because it doesn't sync with the semester when everyone's pretending to do schoolwork and actually reading comics. So for us, we try to time it to either be, as you say, in April or in, say, September and November. But that's on a traffic basis. And I should say I don't have like a scientific basis for those numbers because obviously we can't do enough experiments to know for sure. But a lot of my revenue, I think, is made from me being able to drive traffic. So I try to sync up with traffic cycles.
Yeah, I think it does really depend on what you're trying to sell on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Like I said, video games are usually worst off in the winter.
Yeah, the only one thing I'd add to that is just be cognizant of the day you're ending. Don't make sure your campaign's not ending on Labor Day or 4th of July or wherever your audience is national holidays, partially because people are not at that generally not on their computer on Thanksgiving or that break. So you have seen people who missed that bump at the end because everybody was AFK.
And try not to run at the same time. It's another big project. You don't want to go up against a Bard's Tale or a Shenmue A3.
Is there a question back there? Yeah.
Yeah, what kind of strategies do you recommend for updates or content that you're releasing over the course of the campaign announcements?
Definitely one of the most important things, and this is interesting, and actually, like, I've lobbied Kickstarter for a very specific feature to help people. You want to err on the side of too much communication, I think. It will piss a few people off, but at the same time, like, it's much better than the alternative. I will say, as a project creator, there's this, even though you know you need to post a lot of updates, there's always a weird negative feedback cycle where you're like, oh crap, this one thing is delayed a week. I'm going to wait until I have news about that before I post the update. Right. And then something else goes along, and then you end up having these like monster updates that people are appreciative of, but you know, you need to really be posting more updates. And I really have been like begging Kickstarter to build some sort of digest thing so people who don't like getting updates just get them, you know, batched up in a week or something. But you want to be communicating, you know, a bi-weekly basis, even if you have like nothing to say. Yeah. Just to say like, I am here. Here's a picture of my cat while I am, you know, like folding this envelope.
We've basically done that. I've posted updates that are basically like, hey, we're still working on this stuff. I have no information for you, and people appreciate it because they know you're not disappearing on them. You know?
Yeah, there's. I backed a project which I guess it's like Pencil Dice or something last year, and they did probably 75 updates over the course of the campaign, and I thought my life was going to end reading these updates.
One thing I've noticed is that during the campaign, while it's running, a good number to hit for is maybe one update every 1 or 2 days. Yeah. Post-campaign, you could probably get away with at the least once a month before people start wondering where the hell you've gone.
And if you say everything's shipping by whatever March, you need to have an update in March to let them know when we're
there. Oh yeah.
Because those comments on the page are really, I think they're a little embarrassing.
Conspiracy theories. Yeah,
absolutely. Going back to another thing that just mentally prepare for on this too is like, there will be a couple trolls, people who give you $5 just to make your life a living hell.
Yes, they own you because of that $5.
Yes,
yeah,
and you can't make them go away. Don't feed the trolls. You guys probably are all super pros on this, but if it's the first time that you publicly have put your name out, which my Kickstarter project was that for me, it hurts bad when one person is just like, you know, has a freaking axe to grind, and even though you have like 10 other backers who are like, no man, chill out. So mentally prepare for that because you need to grow like a really, really thick
and that relates to the third party thing. Like if you're working with a third party or you just have a friend who is just like evil or something, put them between you and the customers. I mean, don't have them be awful to your customers, but just someone who can absorb insults a little better than you is really nice, actually. It makes the whole experience a lot easier for a creator because artists, we're all wimps. And so...
it sucks.
Yeah, it does. It hurts your feelings.
I mean, and you know, obviously we're all here because of crowdfunding. We're super grateful, but like, prepare yourself. Because, you know, it's like, we get it. Like, this thing is your baby. You're making it awesome. someone is going to tell you they think it sucks. I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, but thank you everyone for showing up. And if you have questions, just come up to us and we're happy to answer them. Sorry we couldn't get to all the questions, but yeah, thanks for showing up.
Thanks, Rowan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.